All right.
All right. Hello, everyone. This is the second episode of Real Estate Roundtable here with Jason Bates. And you can reach me by visiting my website at www.valleyofthesunrealestateshow.com. Connect with me on any social media. Of course, we are here on Blab, and we are super excited to be talking about some of the trends that are happening here in real estate. I'm also joined here with my co-host, George, out of Chicago. So, George, introduce yourself and tell us how we can get a hold of you.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? This is Jorge Cuevas with Agent Redefined, and I am based out here in Chicago. I'm just a former real estate agent that turned into a marketing guy, guru, whatever you want to call me.
The applause was late, man. Sound effects guy, you're fired. But hey, we're going to talk today about the trends in real estate. And I wrote down some things, and we're going to cover a lot of stuff, and we're going to try to keep it to 10 minutes per segment. So please, if you're in the room, tweet it and tell a little bird, share with your friends. Let's get as many people as we can into the room here and see if we can have a real productive conversation.
All right, let's do it.
So the first one here that I want to talk about is the mortgage trends. The trends that I see, I'm on the mortgage side. I'm not a realtor. I do a lot of loans here in Phoenix, Arizona. And so I want to talk about some of the trends that I see here happening, at least here in Arizona. And I think they're pretty universal across the country. Number one, that being there are fewer delinquent mortgages out there. Therefore, there are fewer REO properties and foreclosures that I see out there. We're seeing on the books, and I'm with a company that does full servicing for their mortgages. So I'm seeing a lot fewer delinquent mortgages, which is a good thing. We're starting to see that portfolio kind of shore up, if you will. We're also starting to see more consolidation of mortgage brokers. I know there's a lot of mortgage brokers out there. They're pretty popular actually in California. I don't know about there in Chicago. And it's not, here in Arizona, there's a lot of mortgage bankers, but there still are some mortgage brokers. And with the implementation of TRID, I do feel that the mortgage broker world will kind of consolidate and kind of morph into a mortgage banker, even a traditional depository bank, if you will. Third thing that I'm kind of seeing here is I'm seeing more first-time home buyers having a difficult time saving for down payment. I'm seeing a lot of first-time home buyers. This isn't really necessarily true with second or move-up buyers, but especially with the millennials, let's face it, it's pretty difficult out there to save some money for down payment on a home. And so I'm getting a lot of requests for down payment assistance when it comes to purchasing your first home. We're also starting to see on the mortgage side a lot of pressure from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and HUD, for that matter, to be more forgiving when extending credit. They're wanting us to open up the floodgates, not really the floodgates per se, but they're wanting us to open up a little bit when extending credit, dig a little bit deeper, if you will, to prospective buyers on the credit. Now, the flip side of that is we do that and then we get penalized for doing it. So that's why a lot of lenders are still very reluctant to open up their appetite, if you will, for risk because they're afraid of getting their hand slapped, some fines, that sort of thing. So it's really kind of a catch-22 for lenders out there. Number 5, I believe, and this is yet to be told or seen, I believe it's going to take a little bit longer to get a mortgage loan with the implementation of TRID. Right now, traditionally here in Arizona, it's about 30-day close of escrow. That may move to a 45-day close of escrow, maybe 35, 40 days. But TRID is really kind of throwing a monkey wrench into a lot of lenders and how they disclose. It's actually a good thing for the consumer because it's easier and it's a little more legible, if you will, a little more easier to understand. But I hit the sound effects there on my elbow.
It's like gun loading.
Yeah, it was a gun load. It's a shotgun thing. So, with TRID, I think it's going to take a little bit longer. So that's not really a trend right now, but I think it's going to become a trend where it's going to take longer to get a loan done. So when you're making an offer, don't expect to close in 2 weeks. It's probably not going to happen if you're doing financing. The other thing that I really see, and this kind of goes back to the first-time home buyers, is that I'm seeing that buyers don't really realize that they can actually qualify for a home. So I'm seeing a little bit of a trend. I've seen this for quite some time, actually, that a lot of people don't realize that they don't have to put 20% down to purchase a home. They can put as little as 3% down on a conventional loan and still purchase a home. So I'm seeing a lot of buyers that are uneducated, if you will, when it comes to the mortgage, because it's very confusing. There's a lot of different with overlays and different credit requirements per every lender that you speak to. Can be very confusing for the average consumer. So I'm seeing that out there quite a bit. I'm also seeing more lenders trying to get into the servicing aspect of mortgage lending. So I'm seeing a lot of lenders, as the portfolio is the base, if you will, it has been cleaned up of all the liar loans and all the bad debt loans, if you will. We're seeing a lot more lenders wanting to get into the party, so to speak, on the servicing aspect, because that's really the value of a mortgage company, is their servicing portfolio. And so we're seeing more lenders trying to get into that platform, purchasing servicing platforms, so they can increase their net worth, which then opens up the gates for Fannie Freddie and some of the unique products they may offer. And so lenders are trying to navigate through that and get a little leverage on their competitors. This year, especially for lenders, and maybe so for realtors, I'm seeing the CFPB, I'm calling it the year of enforcement. I've seen quite a few companies here in Arizona get fined from the CFPB for not following the Dodd-Frank or some of the other rules. So seeing that quite a bit as a trend. And I'm also seeing the cost of a home loan has continued to rise. With TRID being implemented, we're seeing that appraisals, for example, that were once $400, and before Dodd-Frank, it was like $300, $350. Now they're upwards of $500 for an appraisal, at least here in Arizona. I don't know about there in Chicago, but here in Arizona, so it's getting a little more expensive.
I think it's a TRID. The new TRID guidelines is going to raise the price of appraisals, and I think that you're also going to see, from what I've heard, if you can give me some more info on this, is that on FHA loans, for an appraiser to do an FHA loan, I don't know if there's new guidelines coming out or if they're already out now that were supposed to be kind of timed with the TRID updates. That's going to make it more expensive for the appraisers to do their job because of the amount of paperwork they have to fill out to finish an appraisal for an FHA loan. Is that correct or true?
Yeah, no, I've heard the same thing. Now, we don't really see it here because we have that buffer for the management company. So what it means is the appraiser gets squeezed a little bit on their profit. So that may get, they may charge, instead of $350 for the appraisal, they may charge now $400 for the appraisal. Management company takes $75 and there's a $25 profit in there, right, instead of there being a $50 profit before.
I think the biggest thing on the real estate agent side is going to be that there's going to be constant change coming in here, because like right now, you guys are dealing with the mortgage brokers. I say you guys are dealing with the CFPB, whatever it's called. What's that stand for again? The Consumer
Financial Protection Bureau.
Right. And they have been pretty adamant about going after the banks and everything that anything that goes around the paperwork and the process for getting a mortgage. And they've really identified your industry as, we're coming after you guys. And I mean, TRID is really the reflection. It's the actual it's them putting what they've got planned out to do to you guys or enforce. That is the first outcome of this new government agency to come out. I think, and I think that's going to continue to change, because like with all regulation, it starts in one place and then it never really, stops. I kind of foresee it that it's going to continue to kind of grow in what they're going to expect from the mortgage brokers. Now, whether that ends up coming over on the real estate agent side, like do they come into the real estate agent world and start to put their own enforcements in play? I think that's like a future type thing that could happen after they get done with doing what they want with the mortgage brokers.
Yeah, I'm getting emails every day about the CFPB and who they're fining, how much they're fining, what they're fining for. There's actually, I just saw an article today from the Mortgage Brokers Association, a lobbyist group that I'm a part of. they actually are pushing back on the CFPB right now, saying, hey, well, wait a minute here, guys. You guys are being a little bit ridiculous on some of this stuff. So there is some pushback on that right now. So we'll see what happens. I just see the CFPB, getting more and more involved in it. So we'll see what happens there.
Right. And then I think the other thing, I do agree with you with first-time home buyers, that first-time home buyers, in one hand, they're not aware of all the programs that are available for them. And I think for the real estate agent on your side, the agent side of it, you do have to be well-versed with all these programs that are constantly coming out there. And that's, I think, what makes it confusing for most agents, is that there is so many programs and they do always seem to be changing. And then you have these programs on a federal level, and then each state seems to have their own sorts of programs available. Like here in Illinois, the state has several programs with down payment assistance money that's available for them. And I do agree with you that you said that there's a lot of buyers that do sort of that don't have the money, especially your first timers, that don't have the money for down payments. And I do see a lot of them are expecting to find some type of free money out there somewhere.
A lot of people, even if they have the money, they're still looking for free money. Yeah. Kind of crazy. Even though they may get a not as an attractive deal on the actual rate or the terms of the loan, they're still wanting that free money. So when people hear free money, they're all over that. Bees on honey on that stuff.
Yeah. But I think the key term, or the key takeaway, is going to be that there will be constant change going on in the mortgage industry over the next year, like in 2016. And I think for a real estate agent, I think that's exactly why you should have in the palm of your hand 2 to 3 mortgage lenders or brokers, whatever, that you really trust, that they're going to tell you exactly what's going on. They're well informed and they're going to share that information with you. And they're not the kind of brokers that will tell you whatever you want to hear. They're just going to tell you the truth. Everything from whether they can actually close a loan or not. And then with the TRID guidelines, there's no doubt that it easily adds 7 to 14 days to a loan. And then I think the biggest thing on TRID is, like, when you make a change on the HUD, the new HUDs that I have out now, when you make a change on there, it has to be sent to all parties, right? Before you can go back to the closing table. Like, you can't make a change the day before closing on the HUD and then go to closing the next morning.
There's no more HUD.
Yeah, there's no more HUD. There's like this new statement.
Let's call it. Yeah.
Right.
So that now is taking place to the HUD, which is a little bit easier to understand for the consumer. The HUD wasn't too bad anyway. But it's a little bit easier format to kind of follow. It's kind of like the old good faith estimate. It's a little,
yeah, it is
for the consumer. The last thing here too, I want to kind of mention here real quick, that I wasn't even aware of this until recently. I knew it was kind of up there, but I started thinking about it today, and I just see this as a trend that's going to be bad for our industry, and that is that the average loan officer. Take a guess at this. What do you think the average age of the loan officer is in the mortgage industry right now?
Yeah, I have no idea.
It's 54.
Really?
54. And why I think that's going to be bad is because we don't have anybody to replace the experience of the people who are in it now. Right. And if everybody ends up retiring out of it, that means it's going to go to the major banks who, at least from my experience, the service aspect. And I always say to, my consumers or my referral partners, realtors, we're in the service oriented business. If you can't provide the service, you're out of the business. The banks really don't provide very good service when it comes to that, especially for the realtors.
Yeah.
And
I would think that there's not a lot of people that are looking at, when they look at career options, I would say there's not a lot of people are going to just say, yeah, I want to become a realtor. And I think especially so when it comes to becoming a mortgage broker, you kind of fall into that position for a lot of guys. Like, you don't come out gate saying, I want to be a mortgage broker. That's the career path I want to be, because it gets such a bad rap for, just the bank, working for one of the banks and everything. Nobody goes to wanting to work in one of the banks, especially when you're lending money and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I didn't grow up aspiring to be a mortgage. that was not my gig.
Ever.
Yeah, some sound effects.
All right. On the mortgage thing, I really think the whole big thing is get used to more change coming and get used to more regulation from this new government agency. And definitely, if you're not down with TRID yet and understand what's going on with that, at least as far as it affects you and your buyers and sellers in the real estate transaction, find a real estate attorney or title company or a mortgage broker to explain that to you, because you should be up to date with all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are the trends I saw in mortgage. So I think we're right on schedule with that. So let's jump over to the next one. Some trends that we may see or are seeing, and I think some realtors may want to help us out with that. But maybe from the and I touched a little bit on it from the mortgage side, from buyers and sellers. But I guess more or less from the seller side, what kind of trends are we seeing or are you seeing out there as from sellers? Or like here in Arizona, for example, it's a hot market. It's still relatively hot.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of sellers still wanting to, pie in the sky, ask for the highest price, even though they know the home isn't worth it. And maybe that's because they're still a little bit underwater or right at that threshold of being underwater. And so they want to, strike while the iron's hot, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I think we're in a market where it's not a seller's market and it's not a buyer's market, because if it was a seller's market, a true seller's market, it requires more than just low inventory. Like pretty much across the whole country right now, we have low inventory rates almost everywhere, except for like some of the last few surviving high foreclosure rate areas. And but the low inventory isn't necessarily getting the sellers the prices that they believe their homes are worth. And so like many times there's a discrepancy there behind what they think their home is worth and what it actually really is on the street. They're at the actual market value of the home. And I think first part is educating those sellers on that, and then and getting them to the point to where reality is. And the only way that can be done is through like a really comprehensive analysis of what's taking place in their immediate market within that mile radius.
Right. I agree, man. That's now what about like from a buyer's perspective, like here in Arizona, again, on a buyer's side, when they're looking to purchase a home, they want to lowball every single offer. They still think it's like Deal City out there.
Yeah. And that's what I say. It's not a buyer's market, not a seller's market. Yeah. And the sellers or the buyers, they think that it's a buyer's market. Sellers kind of think it's a seller's market because they want more money for their home than it's actually worth. And the buyers, they think that they have more purchasing power than they really do, that really exists. Like even though mortgage rates are low, which is great, it gives them more purchasing power. They do believe that they can have the stainless steel appliances, the hardwood floors, the granite countertops, and all the features and all the options, and pay like that low ball, like to get that low ball price. And they don't understand that the other side of how inventory affects that. No one's getting the bargain basement deals anymore. Even the rehabbers have a tough time finding deals anymore.
Right. You can't even get them on the courthouse steps anymore, can you?
It just depends on what area and what kind of connections you got.
Yeah, I know here in Phoenix, man. I mean, the investors have kind of skedaddled. I know, like some of the investors that I was doing a lot of loans for here in Phoenix when you could buy a house for $50,000. They've kind of moved on to Ohio, Indiana,
the middle Detroit markets.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially like markets like where you're at or in Southern California, and even Vegas have dried up in terms of all the foreclosures. And then even areas here like in Chicago, you'll still find them. But then the problem becomes that there's so much competition and there's so many real estate investors that are trying to all buy the same property. And there's so many of these wannabe new real estate investors that they go and take a class somewhere and they learn how to become a real estate investor over a weekend training course. Those guys are out there, putting offers on everything too. So it's very competitive, and it is not, if you're a real estate investor right now, you're not finding deals necessarily on the MLS. You got to do other tactics like send out yellow letter campaigns and still doing bandit signs and stuff like that to get them. But I think that could segue, at least a side shoot is for a real estate agent on if you were looking at your 2016 and looking at ways to grow your business. The real estate investors are all still there. What's going to end up happening is that you're going to get, there's going to be there's a saturation right now of too many real estate investors, but they are going to start to filter out the ones that are doing just one or two deals. And I think that means that there will be plenty more opportunity for a real estate agent to make connections with and build relationships with real estate investors in 2016. Those are still a great lead source for any agent to take on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even on your end, on the mortgage broker end, those guys need mortgage brokers that can qualify their buyers. They need to have the real estate investors need those kind of relationships too. It's a two-way street there. So I think that's a great, in terms of a trend, I still think that's a very positive place where there's opportunity for a real estate agent or a broker, mortgage broker.
Now you mentioned before too, with an agent, having 2 or 3,
rehabbers.
Loan sources, if you will. Yeah. Right. From our side of the fence, on the mortgage side, we hate to hear that.
Why?
I know it's the reality of it, but we hate it because when I refer somebody out to a realtor, which I often do, because I get leads or whatever, and I'll refer it out to my referral partners. Mm-hmm. I don't give them 3 different realtors.
Yeah, I know.
I ask them, hey, you're in this area. This is the realtor you want. It specializes in that area. You need to talk to them. They're the best in the business. I understand the whole, idea behind the realtor, but if you have a good relationship, it's kind of like a marriage. I truly believe if you have a good relationship with your realtor, that they trust you and you trust them, and they know what you're going to say and what you're not going to say. You know what they're going to say and not going to say.
Yeah.
I think it works.
Oh yeah. It's a vital relationship. Like, you have to have that. I think for me, when I was still practicing, I always had 3 lenders. And my main reason for keeping is I had my one guy who was my top guy, but I needed to have backups. Sometimes I had some buyers that just didn't want to deal with that one person for whatever reasons.
Personality, right? I get it.
And sometimes they didn't want to work with that bank, and there's just situations that come up.
Right.
And sometimes, mortgage lenders don't always stay at the same banks. And sometimes I've seen them switch before, where they were a good mortgage broker. They went from one office to another office. And then what happens is that the other office doesn't have the same support, doesn't have the same underwriting, doesn't have all the same systems in place. And you could throw a good mortgage broker into any mortgage broker office facility or whatever. If he doesn't have that back end office working with him in coordination with him, he's got a mess there. He can't close deals. He's got problems. You just can't get your job done, and you'll have to end up going back to where you were before, finding a better place.
Right. No, I agree. So, okay. So let's move on to the next one here. Yeah. So real estate brokerage, and it looks like we got a couple realtors in the house here, or in the room, I should say. Yeah. So if you want to join in and please just buzz in, or, the seat's open so you can jump on in. But, I've seen some real estate brokerages, for example, I think we talked about it last week. There's a real estate brokerage up in Seattle. They are not allowing their realtors to put their homes on the MLS.
Oh yeah.
Washington,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's happened in a few areas.
Yeah. They want it on, Trulia or Zillow or realtor.com or these other places. They're kind of, not wanting to deal with, the MLS.
Yeah.
So what kind of trends have you seen in your area? There's a lot of 100% shops here. HomeSmart's a big one here.
HomeSmart started out of Arizona or out of Phoenix.
Yeah, it's big here. It's really, really big. The Keller Williams model is good a lot of times for maybe a beginning realtor, or somebody who's got maybe some people underneath them where they're getting a split from those other realtors. It doesn't seem you're either way at the top, it seems like, with Keller Williams, or you're kind of just starting out. I don't see too many realtors in the middle. Maybe they're there. I don't know. Maybe I just don't deal with those realtors. It seems like if you get in the middle, you try to maximize your income and you end up going somewhere else.
Well, Keller Williams is going through a really big revamp, and they've been going through that for the last 3 years now. They're in a big growth phase right now. They're big on recruiting. The Bold program is everywhere, and actually isn't that bad of a program at all. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think that what I see is we're going to see more of the 100% shops in 2016. There's no doubt about it. Like they're already out there, and there's like HomeSmart down in Phoenix. They're growing, and as they grow, they're going to try to find the right broker owners to partner with them and open up franchises. And as HomeSmart becomes more successful, we already seen them, and you're going to see more other 100% shops come up, and they're going to come up with their own little models, their own little take, and their own little spin on the 100% model. And I think for the real estate agent, like whether it's Keller or a 100% model or even like a Coldwell or Remax or whatever, it ultimately comes down to how much money, like what's your split, how much money in fees are you paying per transaction, and how much money in fees you're paying in your annual dues to whatever that franchise has got going on. And you've got to back into your numbers. Like right now, every realtor should be like looking at their 2015 production, all the deals they closed, and how much they paid out to their brokerage. Yeah. And I think
return for it, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you got to, there's got to be a return for it. And there's got to be, my breaking point is going to be usually between 14 to 16,000. And I think if you're somewhere at that 4 to 5 million in annual production and up, then you should be like somewhere in that, if you're paying any more than 15,000 per year, that's too much. In my book, that's way too much. And if you're anywhere above that 6 million in production, if you're paying out more than 14 grand a year in your between your split and all the fees that brokerage is charging you, you're paying too much. And like I know brokers that are doing 6 to 9 million per year in gross sales, and they're paying out like 20 grand, 22 grand, 24 grand to their brokers. And that's just way too much. That's all money that should be going right into your own pocket and reinvested into your training, into your marketing, and all that stuff. But I think that the trend is going to be the trends to look for in real estate brokerages are the real estate brokers are all sort of hurting, that they all need bodies. Every broker out there is trying to get more bodies into their office because there's more competition. There's more offices that opened up now.
What about this? I see this a lot here in Phoenix too. A lot of team formation from realtors. Mm-hmm. So a lot of realtors say, "Hey, I'm the buyer's agent, or I'm the listing agent, or I'm this." That's happening a lot. A lot of agents want to team up with a successful team, take a smaller cut, and just have a specific role.
Yeah.
That as well.
Well, the teams, they've always been there. They've always, in real estate, they've existed since the beginning of the real estate brokerage. There's always been these teams, right? Because there's always the rainmaker in an office, one or two, and that rainmaker at a certain point, they're at a certain point, they can't run their business without having buyer's agents or listing agents or some type of staff helping them out to do those transactions. So with a team, where I usually see realtors get it wrong, why they join a team in the first place. Like if you join a team, it's got to be if you've already got production and you've got a database and you're already doing your own thing, I don't see any benefit for you joining a team unless you know that you're going to get a lot of buyer leads or listing leads or both coming out of it. So like it's got to be a good deal for you. And the reason why I say that is because during that time, if you're not building your database as you close those deals that you're getting in from that team, if you're not building up your own business, that team could renegotiate the terms that you originally set with them. That team could dissolve. Not a lot of teams last forever. And as you know, when you go into business, you're essentially going into business with someone else, partner, and it's a partnership. Partnerships do dissolve. And the last thing you want to do is to be stuck with your hands, in your pockets and wondering what's my next step, what's my next move. I've been working for this team for 2 years, but I haven't really built my business. So you're almost like starting from scratch right there, like again after you're already doing it once before.
Now we talked about with realtors and the brokerage shops and what you get in return. You mentioned I think $8,000 or $8,000 a year or something like that.
Oh, I don't think you should be paying. Honestly, I don't think you should be paying more than 14,000 a year.
14,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
14.
what do you think in return? Like I've seen a lot of real estate shops offer like, hey, here's your free website, or here's your, I don't know, I don't want to say concierge service, but they have all these little trinkets, I kind of call them into what they offer their agents.
Yeah,
Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Is it kind of a shiny object kind of, because at the end of the day, people do business with you.
right.
I mean, name recognition needs to go somewhere, right? I mean, it's HomeSmart. Everybody knows HomeSmart. West USA is a big one here. Those sort of things can help an agent and help their brand a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's the buyer doing the business with the agent, not necessarily the agent that represent.
Well, they're all offering, like, even HomeSmart, which is, supposedly it's 100% shop. And they all have their fees and stuff like that, but all those shops all offer this whole myriad of extra services and apps and tools and trainings and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes some of that stuff is good, and sometimes it's just crap. You have to really do a good assessment on what it is you actually need. So, like, before you join a brokerage, or like right now, this is the time of year when a lot of brokers or agents start looking at a new brokerage to join. And you go and you go to Starbucks, or you show up at their office and you have their little meeting, and they're essentially giving you a pitch. Most brokers have some type of a recruiting pitch, and some of them pay a lot of money for someone to teach them how to do a recruiting pitch. So you're getting a pitch, you're being pitched, and they are always going to dangle in front of you the features and the everything that their brokerage offers. And sometimes, or many times in my experience, they do that first at the very beginning of the pitch. They load you up with all the features and everything else before they start talking about splits and fees and everything else.
Yeah, the other thing that I see too with brokerages, although it's starting to diminish here in Phoenix anyway, maybe it's happening there in Chicago, see a lot of brokerages wanting to do marketing service agreements with lenders, right? And so that was huge. Like last year and the year before is a huge trend.
It's growing.
The CFPB is really starting to crack down on that. We talked about the CFPB. They're going to start hammering that. Title companies have really pulled back what kind of services they offer realtors. And I always tell, a realtor or a brokerage shop, okay, I'll get into an MSA agreement with you if you can show me how it actually benefits your agents and not you.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing stopping them from calling me. It helps you as a brokerage, helps, put the, keep the lights on or whatever. But what exactly are you using that money for to help build your agent's business?
Right. It's one of those things for me. The whole thing with the MFAs is that it makes total sense on paper. And like if I was a practicing real estate agent still, which I'm not anymore, and I was in Phoenix, and me and you hooked up, and we said, hey man, if you can get me over, it's the cat. If you can get me over,
yeah, that's just appropriate for this stuff.
If you can send over, give me $500 a month so I can spend on whether it's Zillow ads or postcards or any of that kind of stuff, you're on paper, it makes sense as starting a relationship, but what happens is that you've got to be able to provide a return for the mortgage broker. And so what you end up happening, what I see a lot of times happen is that some mortgage brokers are very open about the cash. Like they do throw a lot of cash out there at the realtors, which is awesome. They're supporting them and everything else. But then it's up to the realtor also to reciprocate that and send them leads, get them leads over there. And that's where I usually see the realtors not being as generous or faithful, unless it's a totally honest agent and they're great and everything. And see, the thing is that you want to grow your business to a point to where you need the relationship with your mortgage broker. But I think that relationship is far more valuable than trying to squeeze out like $6,000 in marketing expenses from them, because you should want that real estate broker to be there on call for your clients, so that they can service your clients, so that they're giving you all the right information on deals and you could depend on them. That's what you should be hitting them up for, is like the service level. And, if you have like if you have like a client party or something like that, or you have an event, yeah, get them for $1,000 or something like that, or $500 to help host your event, or to buy donuts or pizzas for your next office meeting or something like that. I think that stuff's cool, but to depend on them for your marketing budget, that's the part where, I mean, you should be focused. I would focus more on building your business so that you can maintain your own marketing budget.
Right.
Because then what happens when that mortgage broker's money runs out, or they got to allocate, you guys got to allocate your money to where it gets spent, because you need a return on that. And then, so what happens if you're doing Zillow ads for 6 months, and you're getting some deals, you're not getting enough as you like, but you are getting some deals. Now the broker says he can't do it anymore. Are you going to stop doing your Zillow ads? And and then and you haven't really budgeted for it, you haven't planned for it, you haven't done any of that stuff for it.
Right.
And
right.
I would say you should want to be in control of where that how the money's being generated for your marketing, have control over that, because I think that's an essential part of running your business.
Yeah, and Deb kind of brings up a question here. What about the age-old attitude of realtors that they're buttering everyone's bread, never mind the hunger? I get it. I totally understand. I totally get it. It's kind of a take kind of thing. And I think this is something that we may start to see in the future from the lending perspective.
Yeah.
I personally, when I meet with a realtor, I don't ask them for their business. I ask them, what can I do to help increase your business?
Yeah.
And just like with you, George, you do your marketing and things like that. We've talked about this, off camera, if you will, quite extensively. It's about helping and becoming a team. You get more accomplished with two than you do one. And if you've got a good lender who's on your side, advocating for you and promoting you on their Twitter feed or their YouTube channel, then you're spreading your web of potential, people to contact, and you just get more accomplished with that.
You get way more accomplished like that, I believe. And then, because if you just look at your mortgage broker as just like this big money bag, like you see them, and like on the old Tom and Jerry cartoons, you just see this bag of money. That's just the wrong way to take on that relationship. You need to have, there's a whole host of service providers you need as an agent. You need your mortgage brokers, your title companies, your real estate attorneys. You got tradesmen, inspectors, all the appraisers, all those people you need to have that you can trust, because your clients need access to those people. And I think that's part of the value that you bring to your clients as an agent.
Right.
Yeah. So
Kim brings up a good point too. She's got, it's a little bit different for the realtor and what they're actually marketing for and what they need the marketing for: photography, professionally done videos and things like that. So totally get it. But in a lot of cases too, I market myself for buyers all the time too. I'm looking for buyers just as much as any realtor is looking for buyers.
Right. This, for the realtor side, this cuts right back into how much money are you spending? And I say spending by being at your brokerage right now. So like, what are they charging you? What are their fees? What is your split with them? Because, you're going to get a commission. And that's, if you're selling a house, that's going to be 2.5 to maybe 3.5% if you're able to get, if you're able to negotiate your 6%. And then if you're on the buyer side, you're getting 2.5 usually, unless there's like a bonus or something like that. The money is pretty much going to be pretty much set for every transaction you close. So now you have to look at what does it cost for me to list a house? What does it cost for me to sell a house? There has to be a marketing budget in place. And I don't say that because I'm a real estate photographer and I make money from realtors paying me for the real estate photography and videos and stuff. It's we do those things because they're required, they're needed today. So now you got to back into your numbers. If you're paying out, like if you're doing a 70-30 split with a broker and they're not assisting you on paying for the photos and the marketing of that property, then in my opinion, you're paying too much to that brokerage, and you're not getting the most bang for your buck for it. And I think that's exactly when we start talking about getting money for your mortgage broker and stuff like that. I say you start first with, what am I paying out to my brokerage? And are they really benefiting me? Are they helping me grow my business?
No, it's the same thing on the mortgage side, right? So, I know Sean is in the chat room here on the mortgage side. Mm-hmm. We're W-2'd. on the mortgage side. And we're gonna have to wrap this up here as far as this topic, and we'll jump on to the next one. Real quick, on the mortgage side, we're W-2'd. So we're an employee of an organization, where on the real estate side, you're 1099. So a little bit different as to what you're responsible for. But the same thing happens on our end. A lot of times mortgage companies don't provide marketing. They don't provide this. They don't provide that. You pay it out of your pocket to get the business. Well, I always kind of refer to it as, hey, if I was a Xerox copier salesman, I would have an expense account to take realtors or whoever out to lunch and be able to wine and dine them to sell them on our products. I'd have a plethora of resources to, wave the banner of the Xerox copier and why it's the best copier on the market. On the mortgage side, we don't necessarily get that. You get some flyers, you get it's a little difficult. So
you see a lot of mortgage brokers now that are, they're trying to offer marketing services. I see mortgage brokers that put green rooms in their offices to for video services and everything else. And that makes sense. All that stuff makes sense and can totally work but it is all about doing that one thing, which is building a good relationship. I think I just think what's more valuable is that you have a guy or girl mortgage broker that you could call, and they're there. They got your back. They can answer your questions. They have answers, and real answers, quality answers that you need. And you need someone that's accessible, that's there when you need them.
Okay, so let's cut it right there. Let's get on to the next one, because this next one, trends, is kind of, how should I say it? It may spark some, there's going to be a conversation, especially from the real estate side. And I want to get some input, either in the chat room, or you can join us here if you're not too bashful to be on camera. Please jump in. We'd love to have you on. I want to talk about housing and the properties and the trends that we're seeing in the actual physical product. So here in Arizona, for example, it's probably much different here than what it is there in Chicago. There's a different style of house. I call them Taco Bells here. They all look like Taco Bells. But here we see a lot of granite countertops, glass, black backsplash. How much? And we'll open this up to some realtors out there. How much? If you hit the trend right and you're doing the right thing, you're watching HGTV or whatever, and you're putting in this, cool stuff, it looks really cool, right? But I'm seeing, when I saw investors come here in 2010, we saw them buy properties that were maybe 5 years old, and they were gutting the property.
Yep.
So what was trendy 5 years ago, as far as amenities go, all of a sudden disappear.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. You couldn't keep that same for any, such. It could go back to rehabbers. If you're rehabbing a house right now and you've picked up one of those foreclosures that likely closed somewhere from 2004 to 2007, that style, you're right, is totally outdated, pretty badly, by today's standards. So there has to be the hardwood floors, the granite countertops, the stainless steel appliances on the rehab deals. But then but I think that's also what a lot of the buyers are looking for. They're looking for those types of amenities, and they tend to be looking at the sexy stuff. They're looking at they don't care, like we talked about this offline. They don't care about the important stuff, like the roof and the HVAC and the insulation and all that kind of stuff. Right. Until their home inspection, and their home inspector writes up the big report that makes it sound like the house is about to fall down. If they get that kind of report from the home inspector, then that tends to really get buyers on edge, and they'll cancel a contract and stuff like that. But the features, and I think we talked about this yesterday. I think it's important for agents to just know that, especially if you got the rehab clients, you have to understand how to make sure they're going to rehab houses and add those features in it. And when you have a client who has a home to sell, and their home is the only one on the block that doesn't have any updated features, and it's completely from the 80s or 70s, and you're competing against homes that are newly remodeled and finished and stuff, you've got to be able to show them those features, show them pictures of the houses you're competing with, the insides of those houses, not just the prices. So you can go over those features and talk about what works and what's not working. Look at that. Karen's online. What's up, Karen?
So hi. I decided to jump in because I just closed last week on some buyers that purchased a rehab. It was a flip. Well, it was a flip. I wouldn't call it a rehab because it wasn't gutted. And I think it's all relative. I mean, I think that these buyers bought a home in a kind of outer ring suburban area, 11 years old. So it was all original. It's 11-year-old cabinets, 11-year-old tile. It still looked nice, but it didn't have today's latest and greatest trends. Yeah. Now, if that investor had ripped all that out and replaced it, it would have been worth more. But he couldn't get it cheap enough to do that because it was still in good, an 11-year-old house, it was still in good shape.
Right. Because
how important, Karen, is it to the buyers to have, let's say, like a smart home? Like I'm seeing here, you see the plugs now that have the USB and the kind of the Apple, what is it, the little lighted, thermostat that you can check from your phone and all that kind of stuff. Is that important to buyers? Is that a trend?
It's all price point. It really is price point. So there are certainly parts of town. Actually, I don't know that I just put some USB outlets in my house. I don't know that I've ever shown a house that I've seen them in.
It is totally price point.
It's price point. So
because they're looking at that first.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in the more exclusive parts of town, the higher end and every city's price range is different. So the typical, first time buyer, college graduate, 30 years old, buying their first home, or maybe their first home to like really have kids in school age kids. I mean, I'm in St. Louis, that home, depending upon where they live, might be anywhere from 200 to 400,000. In other cities, I know that you get a shoebox for 200,000. So, and there are definitely people that can get into a home cheaper than that. If you spend 500,000 or 800,000 in St. Louis, you're expecting a lot. So it kind of depends on what somebody's price point is, I think, too.
Yeah. So at the higher price points, you're going to expect some of these upgraded items.
Honestly, I don't think buyers care if there is a Nest thermostat, because they know that they can put that in. But they don't necessarily want to have to gut the kitchen. They don't want to have to put in new cabinets. They don't want to have to redo the flooring in every room. But calling a handyman and putting in a few outlets, changing a few light fixtures, some of that.
It's like adding a nice patio to the backyard or a deck.
Yeah.
Or like if you're in a market that has basements, if it's got the high ceilings in the basement, if it's unfinished, they'll deal with that because, like you said, they'll just hire a contractor and they'll finish.
So I am in an area that we have basements, and people want finished basements. So they don't want unfinished basements. So that I had a house earlier this year that I had the hardest time selling it. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was in a golf course community. It was beautiful. Upstairs. It was big. It had great space. They had done all these. They had replaced the wood floors and put in Brazilian cherry wood floors. I mean, it was gorgeous. It had an unfinished basement. And
out there, you guys got a lot of. Yeah, was it a walkout lot?
That one wasn't, and that wasn't a problem. That not being a walkout wasn't a problem. The problem was that the yard sloped. How can I do this? It sloped up. So the house was at the bottom of the hill. So that was a bit of an issue. But so people didn't like the slope of the yard, and they didn't like that it was unfinished basement. But that's the only reason it took us so long to sell it.
I agree. But I think ultimately it just comes down to price. It comes down to
price. It does. So we had to adjust our price. And once we adjusted our price, actually a little bit lower than I thought we were going to have to. Because that unfinished basement became such a deal breaker for people. Yeah. So I think outlets, smartphones, and little things, I think most, especially experienced buyers. So I think first-time buyers don't necessarily expect that kind of stuff. At least in my market, they don't. And experienced buyers get that that's not a big deal.
What about though the whole, Tesla came out with the home battery kind of thing. If those sort of things become at a price point where they're affordable to put in a home, you mentioned your investor couldn't afford to put some of these things in. Is that going to turn into a trend where people are going to expect those things? Like the hot water, the instant hot water. Thing,
yeah.
Right?
That's not common here yet. So we tend to be, so I'm in the middle of the country. Yeah. We're not progressive. We tend to get things a little bit after. So we've had the instant hot water around for years. Yeah. You almost never see one in a house because it's expensive to put it in, and the payback, so people have to be affluent enough to be willing to do that. The same thing with like high efficiency furnaces. The payback on the savings is
it takes a long time.
It takes a really long time versus getting a not high efficiency, but just the step right below that.
It's tough. I think with the coolest thing about the Tesla battery, it's going to be because so many people are aware of that company. And even people that can't afford to buy a Tesla still love the whole idea and the concept and the cars and stuff like that. They have a huge following. So I think with the Tesla batteries and the way that they've been introducing it, it's not out yet, but the way they've brought it onto the market and are bringing it in, that would be the one cool thing that in 2000, I think it does come out 2016. That's the one thing that really could, I see, actually catch on. Just like you said, depends on the price point, what those things are going to go for. I don't think they release price information on those, but I see that as becoming something just because people understand it so easily, and they understand what Tesla does, and they understand the value behind having something that's Tesla or comes from those guys.
Yeah, I guess people have to make choices, and you're not, if you could pick a house and you could pick every feature, then it would be different. Well,
there's
when they,
you got the buyer's triangle. So that's the way I always had it. It's like this triangle, and you've got price, amenities, and location.
Right. And
no matter,
but can't the amenities
2 out of the 3. You never, even if you're buying a multi-million-dollar house and you got all the money in the world, you're never actually going to get everything that you want.
Right.
For every buyer, you're going to usually sacrifice something to get.
And when they build, I've had the same thing. They put in everything that they want, and then they see that they get sticker shock, and then they start pulling stuff back out. So, I've had $1 million buyers, which on our end, in my area, that is that's the 2% at the top of the market that didn't get everything they wanted. Because they wanted to be in a particular part of town. They wanted the new construction, gorgeous HGTV house, but they happened to they wanted to be in this part of town that is all older homes. And there's and it's landlocked. So to get a new house, you have to do a tear down. So they ended up buying a house that they had to do major renovation to, So I agree completely with Jorge that everybody has to make choices and make compromises. And in my area, every area is different. In my area, they care more about the kitchen cabinets. So if they're oak, that's a huge problem right now. We've got oak cabinets, but if they're maple, which is maybe a little out of style, as long as they're not the really light maple, because that's like too far out of style. But like the 6-7 years ago maple, that's a slightly darker stain. They wish it was something different, but that's okay. And, if it's depending upon the area and the price point, they might expect granite. In other areas, a decent looking Formica in my area is fine, but they don't want vinyl on the kitchen floor. They want wood or ceramic, and they don't want old, even if the appliances, they can tolerate if the appliances aren't stainless, but they better not have old looking controls. So, if you got a black dishwasher that's 5 years old, that's okay. But you got a black dishwasher that's 15 years old, you look at the controls and they just look old.
Well, that's what we were talking about before, right? The appliances, here in Phoenix, if it was a home that was 5 years old, and I was telling Jorge, the most interesting man in the world drinking his Dos Equis. What are you drinking there, man? Fat Tire, or what are you drinking?
No, today actually we ran out of Mexican beer, so I'm drinking. I didn't have enough time to go to the market to get some Mexican beer, so I'm drinking Leinenkugel.
All right. We were talking off the air. If I got a stainless steel, refrigerator, and then I have a black or white appliance, I'm like, okay, well, I got to replace that appliance. I'm going to put some matches and all that. So I get price point. I totally understand that. can the amenities affect the price? I mean, within reason, of course.
Only to a certain point. Because even the rehabbers, like, you could have a rehabber in like a neighborhood where you were talking about, Karen, and they could rehab the hell out of that house, but it still has to be market value. They still have to have an ARB, and it has to appraise out too, because most of your buyers are going to be using financing. So you can't go that far. Your home value is still got to be within the spectrum of what that area is going to allow for, just to appraise out.
Right. And the thing is that, so the one that my clients just bought, it had Formica counters. No, actually that's not true. It did have granite counters, but it had 11-year-old cabinets. It had tile in the kitchen that I thought looked slightly dated. It's definitely not, today's latest and greatest tile. They put new carpeting in. They did not repaint, but the paint looked, pretty good. My clients actually didn't really love the color, but it's like, they were like, we can change that. I just think that as a rehabber, to make that house look like today's cutting edge, he would have lost his margin. And in my area, you find buyers that are willing to pay top dollar for that absolutely gorgeous house. And then you have people that are willing to, they want a deal, but they expect a pretty good discount if a house is, a little dated.
Right. So, and that goes back. Yeah. That goes back to the whole, it's not a buyer's market. It's not a seller's market. Right. We're in this hybrid world right now.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on, Justin kind of mentioned here, smart homes here in Arizona? We've got some builders that are really, putting the green homes together. Meritage Homes is, one of those builders here. They're also integrating in some smart features with the home. And I've even seen commercials here with Cox. I don't know what kind of cable service or internet providers you guys have. Cox even has a commercial here in Arizona that kind of sells that point. If you don't have high-speed internet, that could devalue your home. So do you see that the smart homes are becoming a trend out there? That people are going to start wanting these smart homes, not these disconnected homes, so to speak?
I think people want them, but like what Karen said before, it still comes ultimately down to that price. Like when I
think if you're in an area where there's a lot of new construction, it's easier to start building those features in. But in, an area that's got older housing stock, all the homes are getting retrofitted. And so
it becomes like what's going on, Abe? It becomes.
Abe, are you
I think we got
So what I was going to say is that, like in my area, we have a lot of parts of town that there is just no open land left. So to build a new house, you tear down an old one. And there's a lot of homes that were built in the 30s, 40s through the 70s, maybe. And then there are other parts of town where, they were getting built up during the housing boom. Then it hit a little standstill, and now we're seeing more building again. I expect those features in those areas, as long as the price point is high enough.
That's maybe with the builders, right? They got to start that trend. They can afford to put it in at the lower price point and then see how those homes kind of maybe sell and how they develop.
For the builders, it becomes like the ones you were talking about there. And then there's for the builders, it becomes a competitive advantage for them. So they can model their product against, we build greenhouses or we offer this. And it becomes another feature for the builders to offer.
Right.
And then if they're able to figure out how to do it at the right price, God bless them.
But what I'm seeing more than that kind of stuff, I'm seeing the tile that kind of looks like wood, where I see big differences is in the flooring, to be candid, and in kitchen cabinets. Flooring.
Yep. You got ceramic. You got ceramic that looks like wood floors, and you got laminate that looks like wood floors, and it doesn't feel like laminate. It doesn't feel like ceramic. Yeah.
And if you go into a house that has that new flooring, it completely looks different than a house that was built 5 years ago. but the outlets and the, the instant hot water and the green, I think people like that, but it's like the infrastructure. They don't, they don't, especially unless you're getting into a much higher price point, if you're getting into a new construction that is kind of on that's just, the lower end of the price point for new construction. Yeah. People aren't paying extra to have better windows. They're just taking builder grade. They're taking builder grade of everything except for the stuff that is cosmetic.
Right. It comes down to the
trend, right?
It has to be a retail value.
So. The upgrades. Yep. What now? MCO value here kind of brings up a point. And I think this is important to note here too. Here in Phoenix, it's in anywhere for that matter, it's location. The golden rule. Can location be a trend?
Yeah, absolutely. We have neighborhoods that become the hot neighborhoods, or the hot area where the homes are flying off the market. And there's multiple offers and for every house, even the ones that aren't fabulous. Yeah. And then we have other areas that, are just kind of, steady and they're not bad areas, but there's not that still, that buyer, that seller's market and that hot demand.
Yeah.
I think that's true in every city. There's areas.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up because, Justin, I'm thinking the same kind of lines with Justin here. The location can be sort of trendy and it shifts, right? Uh-huh. Builders here in Arizona, they build what they call master plan communities where they have the school, the shopping, all within, walking distance. Because Arizona's kind of spread out. It's not like Chicago where, it's high rises or in the city, suburb, or inner city kind of dwelling. Here, it's all spread out. So location, although it can be trendy, it also shifts depending on market. So is that just good marketing or is it truly a trend?
It just shifts because of the buyer, the demographics of the buyers, the price point. It's also a combination of what the market wants and how many buyers are out there. And so like right now with the low inventory, this is why it would shift. You could see buyers look to other areas that aren't available to them now simply because the prices are just edged up too high for them and the inventory just isn't there. So
right.
I think those are the kind of trends that I think you would expect to see more in 2016 just because the inventory problem is not going to fix itself right now because prices are being held back. Prices aren't going up. If we had a normal market, prices would be coming up to be able to get more sellers into the market, but we don't have that influx of more inventory coming in because prices aren't where sellers need them to be. And that's you have that and the purchasing power effect. That's which the home price index, all those things convoluting together means that this year you'll still have those same kind of issues coming up in 2016.
All right, cool. Well, we're right at an hour here. We killed a whole hour.
Was there anyone else online there that's on it right now that had a question or wanted to jump on with any kind of comment? Did you have another topic or another? Was there anything else on your list that you had?
No, I just had, we talked about mortgage, the trends in mortgage that I talked about. We talked about buyers and sellers, some of the trends that we see there. We talked about the real estate and the brokerage, shops that are out there, some of the trends that we're seeing there. And then the housing and the properties, different features of housing and maybe location, that sort of thing. That's really everything.
I think that's a lot of, I think we covered a lot of good stuff there. There's no doubt that the whole thing with the trends, I think everything is in constant change and constant flux right now. And there's no like going back to the way it used to be. I think everyone kind of knows that it's not going back to the way it used to be, even though the market technically has recovered, that it's still not the same as it was like in 2005 or 4 or anything like that. So I think trends
is that will be back there. Do you ever think it will be back to 2004, 2005?
Not unless we have a real economic boom, like I'm talking about an actual United States of America has a true economic boom where we have GDP growth of like 4% or 5% or something like that. We need that kind of, because the only way for housing to pick up in that kind of way is new companies need to be started, existing companies need to grow, people need to get promoted, people need to be able to advance their careers in other positions with other companies. Although there has to be more security in where the market and where the economy is headed, right. And unless you have that, what's the right word is totally blinding me right now. The consumer confidence, it's like a consumer confidence type indicator. Yeah. So unless the confidence is in there in the future of what the economy is going to bring, you won't have people jumping into the market. You won't have sellers coming into the market to offer more properties and stuff. So I think unless you have that kind of economic boom happening, then the reciprocal effect is that the housing market picks up, because that's one of the first things. It's big ticket items that pick up when you have the economy going upward like that. But I think the economy right now is sort of like this and doesn't know where to go. And we have a presidential election coming up, and depending on who wins, that is going to have an effect on what direction the company goes with tax policy and economics. So you have all these things coming into play next year, and that's all just change, just more constant change.
All right, cool, man. Well, I want to end real quick on that because we are recording. So let's pause that. We'll continue the conversation, of course, but let's just pause.